They were both reborn, and yet Benjamin and Isabella acted like strangers. Without exchanging a word, they silently agreed to pretend they had no history. Benjamin followed Emma, the class belle, to a university far away, while Isabella stayed behind in their hometown. But unlike before, this time she held a quiet advantage. She had already lived this life once. Benjamin's star quickly rose in the big city. He built his career, basked in glory, and eventually married Emma. Meanwhile, Isabella stayed in her childhood home, looking after her mother, content to live quietly but wisely. A decade later, fate pulled their paths back together. The reunion took place at an upscale private room, where laughter and music masked the subtle undercurrents of rivalry and regret. As Isabella opened the door, she heard someone teasing Benjamin inside. "You've really done well for yourself. Married the class belle too, huh?" Laughter echoed through the room. The class monitor noticed her arrival and greeted her warmly. "Talk about the Queen of Rome. Isabella's here." Heads turned, including Benjamin's. He held Emma tightly, almost as if putting on a show. His gaze swept over Isabella, cool and dismissive, carrying a hint of mockery. She stood tall, though. Being pregnant, she hadn't dressed up much. A simple, plain outfit, no makeup, and perhaps a little fatigue etched into her face. Meanwhile, Emma sparkled in Chanel, a Hermès bag hanging from her arm, her makeup flawless, radiating wealth and pampering. "Long time no see," Isabella greeted, her voice calm and steady. Emma offered only a polite smile, clearly disinterested in being too friendly. Benjamin noticed the subtle chill but said nothing. Isabella made her way to some familiar classmates and joined their conversation. "Only Christopher's missing," someone remarked. "His flight's delayed. He'll be here later." The group soon gathered around the dining table, toasting Benjamin repeatedly, praising his success. After several rounds of drinks, Isabella excused herself to the restroom. On her way back, she ran into Benjamin in the corridor. His face was flushed from alcohol, his tone sharp. "Is this what you've become after 10 years without me?" he sneered. She stood motionless, unbothered. But inside, memories she had long buried began to stir. Before their rebirth, things had unfolded much differently. Back then, Isabella and Benjamin had moved to the big city together after college, chasing dreams side by side for a decade. When their careers stabilized, Isabella wanted to return home. Her father had passed away from a brain hemorrhage the previous year, leaving her mother alone. Benjamin had once promised that once they earned enough, they'd return. But when the time came, he kept delaying. "There's no future back home," he argued. "It's not worth returning." In truth, he never planned to go back. His solution was to bring Isabella's mother to the city, but her mother struggled to adapt. No friends, no family, nothing familiar. And even after all those years, Isabella never truly felt she belonged there either. "If you won't go back, I'll return alone," she finally snapped during a heated argument. "Why do you have to pressure me like this?" Benjamin's expression twisted in irritation. "What's wrong with this city? Do you want to stay a country bumpkin your whole life? Do you want our child to start life at a disadvantage?" At 5 months pregnant, her desire to go home only grew stronger. Once the baby was born, leaving the city would be even harder. Their hometown wasn't some backwater village. It was stable, peaceful, close enough to opportunity. "So, anyone who chooses to live in a small town is useless?" she challenged him. "People who waste their lives in tiny towns with no ambition, I despise them," Benjamin shot back. His voice carried a righteousness that stung. "So, am I one of those people?" she asked bitterly. "I don't want you to become one of them," he retorted coldly. Then, almost without thinking, he added words that pierced deeper than he likely intended. "If I could do it over, I never would have stayed back in our hometown university with you. I wasted 4 years there. I should have followed Emma to the city before graduating high school." Emma had confessed her feelings to Benjamin back then, but he had chosen Isabella. They'd studied together for years, naturally falling in love. But once he came to the big city, his regrets slowly surfaced. At first, Isabella believed he was simply expressing how much he'd sacrificed for her, how deeply he loved her. But over time, she saw the truth. He genuinely resented the choices he made. Then came the accident. And after it, the strange gift of rebirth. They were both sent back to the day of their university applications. This time, Benjamin didn't hesitate. He followed Emma to a university in another city, and Isabella remained in their hometown. They both knew what had happened, but neither dared to interfere with the other's choice. She thought they would never meet again in this lifetime. Yet here he was, standing before her, still carrying his arrogance like a badge of honor. "Now you finally see," Benjamin sneered. "Staying in your hometown, what kind of progress did that bring you? Look at you, then look at everyone else. It's too late to regret anything now. I've decided to marry Emma." He pulled out a large diamond ring, holding it up almost triumphantly. It was huge, maybe 5 carats. Isabella recognized it immediately. It was slightly smaller than the one sitting in her own house. "If things had gone differently," he said, "this ring would have been yours." She looked at him without emotion and simply walked past him. She could feel his eyes burning into her back, frustrated and confused. He had chosen his path, lived his dream. Why did he now seek satisfaction in seeing her broken? As she returned to her seat, her phone buzzed. Seeing the caller ID, she answered. "You've landed?" she asked.
"Yes."
"I'll be there shortly," came the warm reply. "If you're tired, I can come back alone." How could I let my wife attend a reunion alone and come back alone? "I'll be there in 20 minutes. A soft smile spread across Isabella's lips. Just as she put down the phone, Emma approached, holding a glass of wine. "Isabella," Emma began, her voice sweet but laced with something sharp beneath the surface. "Long time no see," Emma said sweetly, stepping closer. "Let me pour you a drink." "I really should thank you." Her smile barely concealed the edge beneath her words. "Benjamin told me that if you hadn't been his study partner back then, he might never have gotten into a top-tier university." "There's no need for thanks," Isabella replied calmly. "We simply helped each other." But Emma insisted, raising the bottle. "Regardless, you contributed to Benjamin's success. I'll toast you on his behalf." She began pouring beer into Isabella's glass. Isabella shook her head. "I don't drink." "Just a little," Emma urged, ignoring the polite refusal. As she tipped the bottle, Isabella gently reached out to stop her hand. In that instant, Emma let out a sharp scream.
"Ah!"
The beer spilled directly onto her expensive designer dress and handbag. Frantically, she grabbed napkins, dabbing at her soaked clothing and accessories. "My clothes, me bag. They can't get wet," she cried, the panic in her voice drawing nervous glances from the classmates nearby. They all knew just how costly her outfit was. After a moment of exaggerated cleaning, Emma turned back toward Isabella, her voice laced with accusation. "Even if you're jealous of me, you shouldn't have done this. You've ruined my clothes and bag. You can afford to replace them, can't you?" Before Isabella could respond, Benjamin stormed over. His voice was sharp and accusatory. "Isabella, you've gone too far." "It wasn't on purpose," she tried to explain. "I barely touched the bottle. I just didn't want her to pour me any. Somehow it slipped." But Benjamin wasn't interested in explanations. He sneered loudly, ensuring everyone around could hear. "You couldn't stand hearing that Emma and I were going hunting together, could you?" The classmates murmured among themselves, feeding on the drama. "I always thought Isabella was quiet, not the jealous type," one of them said. "You never know. Sometimes the ones who pretend not to care are the ones who care the most." Another chimed in. Didn't Isabella and Benjamin used to date? She probably regrets not following him to the city. Isabella bit her lip, holding back her frustration. "I told Emma I don't drink," she insisted. "That's why the accident happened," she repeated calmly. Emma offered a thin smile. "I know you've always had special feelings for Benjamin, Isabella." Isabella froze for a moment, stunned by Emma's bold assumption. "What makes you think that? Have I said something? Was it my expression?" Emma's smile grew sharper. "Stop pretending. Benjamin is so successful now. There's no way you don't regret it. Isabella's voice was firm. I don't regret anything. Everyone makes their own choices. I'm satisfied with my life. Benjamin scoffed loudly, clearly doubting her words. But Isabella didn't care to explain further. She had no intention of revisiting the past. This encounter was purely accidental. If she'd known Benjamin would be here, she would have avoided the reunion entirely. I'll compensate you for the damages, Isabella said firmly, eager to end the conversation. Send me the price and your bank details, I'll transfer the money. Benjamin sneered. Do you even know how much her outfit costs? The dress is 150,000 yuan. The handbag, 300,000 yuan. That's not even counting the accessories. Let's call it 450,000 yuan.
Can you afford that?
Isabella forced herself to stay calm. The doctor told me to avoid stress during pregnancy, she thought silently. Benjamin pretended to be generous. If you sincerely apologize to Emma, we'll forget about it. But Emma quickly interrupted, unwilling to let go so easily. An apology isn't enough. You need to promise right here, in front of everyone, that you'll never have any improper thoughts about Benjamin again. Isabella's anger bubbled beneath her composure. She let out a laugh not from amusement, but from sheer frustration. Slowly, she picked up the half-empty beer bottle beside her. The doctor had warned her not to suppress her emotions during pregnancy. Sometimes releasing anger was healthier than bottling it up. With deliberate care, she tilted the bottle and poured the remaining beer over Emma's designer outfit and luxury handbag. The room fell into stunned silence. Emma's face turned pale. For a long, frozen moment, she stared at Isabella in disbelief. You're crazy, she finally screamed. Benjamin immediately stepped forward, shielding Emma as though she were fragile glass, and shoved Isabella back. Thankfully, the class monitor rushed in to separate them before things escalated. Benjamin calmed down. Don't make a scene, he urged. Benjamin seethed, his face dark with rage. Do you think I've been too lenient with you, Isabella? How dare you treat Emma like this? Who do you think you are? Isabella met his glare coldly. I don't need your leniency. I'm not anyone special, I am simply myself. Then, calmly, she added, since I agreed to pay for the damages, that means the dress and handbag are mine now. What I choose to do with them is my business. What concern is it of yours? Benjamin's voice turned sharp. Can you even afford it? Give me the bank account, Isabella said slowly, enunciating each word. Benjamin's tone dripped with disdain. Are you really willing to bankrupt yourself just to irritate me? If you had controlled your temper, none of this would have happened. Isabella didn't flinch. The bank account, she repeated more firmly. Emma, furious, pushed Benjamin to move things along. Stop wasting time with her. If she insists, give her the account. Let's see if she can actually pay. Finally, Benjamin recited the account number. Isabella entered the details into her phone and initiated the transfer. But to her surprise, the system rejected her password. She frowned, sure that she had entered it correctly. She tried again.
Failed.
A third attempt. Failed once more. Her mind scrambled, frustrated with herself. The pregnancy really was affecting her memory. Meanwhile, Benjamin, Emma, and all their classmates watched in smug amusement, relishing the moment as Isabella struggled to complete the payment. The room buzzed with whispers and suppressed laughter as everyone waited for her next move. Emma smirked, her voice laced with venom. Isabella, weren't you so confident just a moment ago? Where's the money now? Why hasn't anything arrived in Benjamin's account? Benjamin stood beside her, phone in hand, watching his screen expectantly, but no notification appeared. I forgot my password, Isabella admitted, her voice calm despite the rising tension. I was afraid that if I tried again, the account would get locked. How convenient, Emma sneered sarcastically. Benjamin chuckled, his laughter heavy with disdain. Around them, their classmates whispered, feeding off the drama like hungry vultures. I honestly thought Isabella was going to pay, one classmate murmured. I felt bad for her. But who would be foolish enough to hand over 450,000 yuan? That's half the cost of a house. Benjamin and Emma were ready to let it go, another added. But Isabella had to keep pushing. Now she's really embarrassed. She can't back out anymore. Emma's voice cut through the whispers like a blade.
Well,
Are you going to write up a payment plan? 1 year?
2?
Or perhaps you'll spend a lifetime trying to repay it. 10 minutes, Isabella said firmly. Christopher should be here by then. Emma's patience snapped. Stop pretending, Isabella. You can't pay. You should have just apologized earlier. Now you'll have to kneel and beg me for forgiveness. The room was heavy with anticipation, everyone waiting to witness Isabella's downfall. But then, the door swung open, and a familiar voice filled the room. Sorry I'm late. Christopher had arrived. Heads turned. With an apologetic smile, he continued, My flight was delayed. Without wasting a second, he walked straight toward Isabella, immediately sensing the tension in the air. What's going on here? He asked, his voice calm but firm. The class monitor, desperate to de-escalate the situation, stepped in. It's just a small misunderstanding, Christopher. We're all classmates. No need for this to get out of hand. You can't do me this favor, monitor, Emma interrupted, her tone arrogant. Isabella doesn't know her place. This wouldn't have escalated if she hadn't poured beer on me. I deserve an explanation, don't I? Christopher's gaze shifted to Isabella, a small smile playing on his lips. You poured beer on her? Christopher, I know you used to have a thing for Isabella, Emma said, pretending to sound sympathetic. I don't want to badmouth her in front of you, but she's gone too far. She's jealous that I'm with Benjamin. That's why she deliberately poured beer on me and ruined my clothes and bag. You know the brands I wear, you recognize how expensive they are, don't you? Then, turning to Isabella with feigned concern, Emma asked, Are you jealous, Isabella? Christopher frowned slightly. What do you think? Isabella replied coolly. Christopher answered without hesitation, There's really not much to be jealous of. Emma's face stiffened at his response. Christopher, don't tell me that after all these years, you still have feelings for Isabella? Yes, Christopher said calmly. That hasn't changed. His admission shocked the room. None of the classmates had known that Christopher and Isabella were already married. The truth was, Christopher had pursued Isabella for years. She had resisted, afraid of repeating the mistakes of her past marriage with Benjamin, a marriage that hadn't been filled with loud arguments or betrayals, but suffocated her nonetheless. In time, she realized that Christopher was different. She no longer needed to cling to the past. And with her parents gently pressuring her to settle down, she eventually agreed. They registered their marriage earlier this year. Shortly afterward, she discovered she was pregnant. They had postponed the wedding ceremony and hadn't told anyone. Actually, Christopher said to the crowd, I only came to this reunion because of her. Then he turned to Isabella. So, what's the situation now? I forgot my bank card password, Isabella explained. Can you transfer 450,000 yuan to Benjamin's account to compensate Emma? Without hesitation, Christopher pulled out his phone. Give me the account number. Emma looked genuinely stunned now. Benjamin's face also darkened, his confidence cracking. Christopher, this is between Isabella and us. Benjamin tried to intervene. You shouldn't get involved. Emma jumped in too, her voice rising. Isabella, you've gone too far. You ruined my clothes and now you're dragging Christopher into this? Do you think he's some fool who'll blindly pay for your mistakes just because he likes you? You're using him. Everyone in the room knew Christopher came from a wealthy family. Back in high school, his parents would pick him up in a luxury car while the rest of them stood at the bus stop. This is exactly what I want, Christopher said smoothly, his tone filled with satisfaction. If she needs me, I'm more than willing. Emma was left speechless, her attempt to humiliate Isabella backfiring completely. Whatever bitterness she harbored against Isabella Benjamin's exit now burned brighter, seeing how Christopher publicly defended her. Why she still hated Isabella so much remained a mystery even to Isabella herself. After all, her relationship with Benjamin had ended years ago. There should have been nothing left to fight over. Christopher double-checked the account details with Benjamin, who stared at him silently, his face dark and tight. Without a hint of hesitation, Christopher completed the transfer. Benjamin's phone buzzed a moment later, confirming the transaction. Emma leaned over, eyes wide. Christopher, you really paid Isabella's 450,000 yuan? What did you expect? Christopher replied casually, as if he had simply bought a coffee. Now that the money's been paid, can you please return to your seat? Emma gritted through clenched teeth, barely able to hide her humiliation. Benjamin, still silent and brooding, simply walked away. Emma hurried after him, her heels clicking across the floor, but Benjamin didn't even glance back at her. Sitting down, he grabbed the cigarette lying before him and lit it, exhaling smoke heavily into the air. The class monitor, trying to save the mood, encouraged everyone to continue eating and drinking. Christopher sat down beside Isabella, frowning slightly as he watched Benjamin puff away. Sorry, Benjamin. Christopher finally spoke, his voice firm but polite. But my wife is pregnant. Could you please not smoke indoors? Benjamin paused, the words catching him off guard. Emma, equally stunned, turned toward Christopher. Your wife? Who's your wife? She asked sharply. Christopher smiled lightly, slipping his arm around Isabella's shoulders. Isn't it obvious? He said confidently. We've registered our marriage. The wedding hasn't happened yet because Isabella's pregnancy came as a surprise. So, we haven't had the chance to tell everyone. You married Isabella? Emma's voice rose an octave, dripping with disbelief. Is there a problem? Christopher asked, still smiling but his eyes steady and sharp. Emma's face flushed deep red, her earlier arrogance now collapsing under the weight of the truth. Just moments ago, she'd stood proudly, mocking Isabella for her supposed jealousy and lack of wealth.
But now?
The tables had turned. Everyone in the room knew Christopher wasn't just any manha had always been outstanding, even back in school. Not only was his family wealthy, but he had consistently been at the top of his class. After graduating, he built his own business empire, and his success today rivaled, if not surpassed, Benjamin's. They simply operated in different cities, so their paths hadn't crossed professionally. But they knew of each other's status. That's why Emma's face now looked like it had been slapped. Her smug superiority had evaporated. The classmates who had once looked at her with admiration now shifted their gazes. The looks they gave her were laced with thinly veiled judgment, seeing her for what she was, someone who looked down on others because of money. Of course, Isabella never cared for status or wealth. What she found in Christopher was something far deeper, a true partner who shared her values. Having lived one life already, she knew too well that no amount of luxury could fill the emptiness left by incompatible hearts. If two people didn't share the same view of life, even the most beautiful love would wither inside the graveyard of marriage. After Christopher's announcement, the atmosphere shifted entirely. Classmates rushed to offer their congratulations. Christopher gently protected Isabella, saying, "My wife can't drink alcohol. Milk is fine for her." One of the classmates, seizing the moment to take a jab at Benjamin and Emma, added sarcastically, "At least we know how to act civilized. Unlike some people who use money as an excuse to bully others." The tension snapped. In an instant, the air around them lightened. Emma's expression soured even more. She looked desperately at Benjamin, silently begging for him to say something to save her from this humiliation. But Benjamin didn't even glance at her. His eyes, however, locked onto Isabella, his gaze heavy and unreadable. Isabella met his stare directly, her heart steady, her eyes calm. Benjamin's eyes had grown slightly red, his emotions boiling beneath the surface. She didn't understand what made him so angry. After all, wasn't this outcome better? Both of them had moved on, or so it should have been. Christopher also noticed Benjamin's gaze and chuckled softly. "Mr. Benjamin, do you have a problem with my marriage to Isabella?" Benjamin looked away abruptly, crushing the cigarette in his hand and taking a long sip of wine in silence. Christopher wasted no more energy on him and instead turned his attention back to Isabella, wrapping his arm around her as their classmates showered them with more congratulations. Finally, one classmate said, After so many years, Christopher's persistence paid off. You two really are perfect together. Another chimed in. A match made in heaven. The atmosphere buzzed with warmth and celebration. The earlier unpleasantness faded entirely, replaced with laughter and chatter. In fact, ever since Christopher arrived, the gathering had only grown livelier. The spotlight, which once shone on Benjamin and Emma, now belonged completely to Christopher and Isabella. Benjamin and Emma, once the center of attention, sat in the shadows, invisible and irrelevant. Unable to bear it any longer, Benjamin abruptly stood up and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Emma scrambled after him. "What's gotten into him now?" one classmate whispered, watching Benjamin's figure disappear. Another added, "He probably thinks he's too important just because he's lived in the big city for a few years. He acts like we're beneath him." "I don't envy him one bit," someone else said. "Sure, he's successful, but that doesn't give him the right to look down on everyone." "Exactly," another agreed. "Everyone has their own life. No one's better than anyone else." The classmates were clearly fed up with Benjamin's arrogance, but Isabella was long used to it. Benjamin had always looked down on people from small towns. In his mind, small-town folks were unworthy, unsophisticated, and permanently stuck at the bottom. After the reunion, Isabella and Christopher sat quietly together in the car. Christopher, slightly tipsy from a few drinks, spoke softly. "You know, I think Benjamin hasn't gotten over you." "Impossible," Isabella replied confidently. "He just can't stand seeing me happy. He thought that because you stayed in a small town, you'd live a miserable life, full of regrets," she continued. "But he never expected that I'd actually find happiness here. Now he realizes that our separation wasn't some punishment for him, it was freedom for me." Christopher didn't reply. He simply hugged her tightly, leaning into her ear and whispering, "I should thank him for letting you go back then." Isabella smiled. "It's hard to say who left who really. I've always thought it was a mutual decision. That's why I've never held any grudge toward Benjamin. Honestly, if he hadn't shown up today, I might have forgotten him completely." But fate wasn't quite finished yet. The very next day, Isabella's phone rang. It was Benjamin. His voice was calm but firm. "Isabella, let's meet." "There's nothing left for us to talk about," she answered, ready to decline. "I'm at Island Cafe, waiting for you," Benjamin said before hanging up, certain that she would come. Just like before, Benjamin was confident he could still predict her every move. In their previous life, regardless of who was right or wrong, Benjamin always managed to manipulate situations to his advantage. Otherwise, she wouldn't have wasted 10 years living with him in that distant city. And just as he expected, she went. But this time it was different. She wasn't going to be pulled back. She went simply to close the chapter once and for all. She entered the cafe, calm and steady. Benjamin was already seated, wearing a faint, familiar smirk, that old sense of triumph still lingering in his eyes. He thought he still had control. She sat down across from him. "Cappuccino or mocha?" Benjamin asked casually. "Just water," Isabella replied flatly. Benjamin leaned back in his chair, studying Isabella as if they were back in a negotiation. The smirk on his face hadn't faded. "You haven't changed much," he said, swirling the coffee cup between his fingers. "Still as stubborn as ever." Isabella remained composed, her voice cool and unwavering. "You didn't call me here to talk about my personality, did you?" Benjamin's lips twitched slightly, as though amused by her directness.
"No.
I wanted to see you. One-on-one. Without your husband interfering." "Christopher has nothing to do with this," Isabella answered calmly. "Whatever it is you want to say, just say it. I don't have time for mind games." Benjamin paused for a moment, his gaze growing more intense. "Are you really happy, Isabella?" The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Isabella's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because I know you," he said softly, leaning forward. "You weren't made for small towns and simple lives. You always wanted more. You always dreamed bigger." His words were gentle on the surface, but laced with the same arrogance that had always defined him. Isabella let out a faint, almost pitying smile. No, Benjamin. That was your dream. You wanted the big city. You wanted the high-rise apartment, the social circles, the constant chase for more. I never needed any of that to be happy. His eyes narrowed, as if struggling to accept her words. You could have had everything with me. Everything. Isabella echoed. You mean being trapped in a life that suffocated me while you chased your ambitions? Living in a city where I had no family, no friends, no sense of belonging? That wasn't everything. That was emptiness dressed up in luxury. Benjamin's jaw tightened, but he quickly masked it with a bitter chuckle. And yet, you married Christopher. Another man from a wealthy family. Another successful businessman. Isabella's voice sharpened, her patience thinning. The difference, Benjamin, is that Christopher never tried to change me. He never made me feel like I was less because of where I came from. He respected my choices, my roots, my pace of life. That's something you never understood. Benjamin's expression hardened, but behind his stoic facade, a flicker of something deeper regret perhaps surfaced in his eyes. You still resent me, he said quietly. No, Isabella corrected firmly. I've never resented you. You made your choice. I made mine. The only difference is that I moved on. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their shared past hung heavily between them. Benjamin exhaled slowly. When I heard you were married, I thought you were trying to spite me, that you were rushing into something to prove a point. Isabella laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Benjamin, you really haven't changed at all. You still think everything revolves around you. My marriage had nothing to do with you. You were no longer a part of my life long before Christopher proposed. He looked at her long and hard, searching for any crack in her resolve, any lingering attachment. But there was none. Only a calm certainty radiated from Isabella, now a peace that no longer needed his approval or recognition. You know, Benjamin finally said, his voice low, almost a whisper, I used to think you were the one person who would never leave me. Isabella's gaze softened briefly, not out of sympathy, but from closure. And I used to think you were the one person who would never try to control me. She stood up, gently placing her hands on the table. Goodbye, Benjamin. As she turned to leave, Benjamin called out one last time, his voice breaking slightly. Isabella, was there ever a time when you truly loved me? Isabella paused, her back still turned to him. The cafe felt impossibly still. Without turning around, she replied, her voice steady but filled with quiet finality. Yes, I loved you once, but that was a very long time ago. And with that, she walked out of the cafe, leaving Benjamin sitting alone with nothing but his regrets for company. The chapter had closed. Finally. Truly. Forever. I'm pregnant, Isabella answered simply, her voice calm but firm. She watched as Benjamin's expression shifted ever so slightly. The confident mask cracked for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. Without a word, he gestured for the waiter to bring her a glass of water. Isabella, I didn't expect you to end up with Christopher, Benjamin finally said, his voice low. You didn't exactly like him back in school, he added, searching her face for some hint of hesitation. People change, Isabella replied coolly. Didn't you reject Emma back then? Yet here you are now. Benjamin opened his mouth to respond but faltered, unable to form an excuse. That's different, he muttered. I wasn't interested back then. Exactly, Isabella said, leaning slightly forward. Marriage is something only those inside it can truly understand. Only they know if it fits. Benjamin's brows furrowed, his temper beginning to rise. So, what are you trying to say? That our marriage in our previous life wasn't suitable? Was it? Isabella countered softly. If it was, why did we end up separating? His face twisted with frustration. I was teaching you a lesson back then, he burst out. I wanted you to realize how wrong you were for being so stubborn. Once you repented and came back to me, we could have fixed things. Isabella simply stared at him. She didn't laugh, didn't cry. There was only a strange sense of resignation washing over her. "Why do you always carry this sense of superiority, Benjamin?" she asked quietly. "Because I was right," he declared, his voice rising. "My choices were right." Benjamin's emotions swirled out of control, his words pouring out. "Look at our classmates. How many of them who stayed in that small town have actually succeeded? Christopher's doing well, sure, but that's only because of his family. Without his family's support, he'd be nothing.
Me?
I built everything on my own, in the big city, through my own effort. That's real success." Isabella sat silently, sipping her water as he continued his tirade. When he finally noticed her calm silence, his frustration grew. "Why aren't you saying anything? If you think everything I say is wrong, then why sit there like this?" She looked at him with a composed gaze. "Benjamin, you find it so difficult to acknowledge someone else's happiness, don't you?" He clenched his jaw, but Isabella continued, her voice steady, each word like a gentle but undeniable wave eroding his defenses. "Yes, you're very capable. I never denied that. It's not easy to survive and thrive in an unfamiliar city. You worked hard. You succeeded. But just because your path was right for you, does that mean everyone else's choices are wrong?" Benjamin's face stiffened, but she pressed on. "You've gained success, wealth, and prestige. That's your responsibility to society. But what about your responsibility to your family? Your parents? Yes, you gave them money, but money isn't what aging parents truly want. At some point, you learn that time and presence are worth far more." Before she could finish, Benjamin cut her off impatiently. "I didn't call you here for your sermons." His voice trembled with suppressed anger. "You've always been like this. Once you make up your mind, no one can change it. That's why." He paused. "That's why I came today, Isabella. To ask you," he exhaled heavily. "To come back with me?" Isabella blinked, stunned, for a moment thinking she misheard him. Seeing her hesitation, Benjamin pressed on.
Yes.
"Take this as my first step. If you come back with me now, we can pretend these past 10 years never happened." His voice softened, as though trying to be gentle. "The only condition is that you get rid of the child." The world seemed to freeze around Isabella. She stared at Benjamin in disbelief, her mind trying to process what he had just said. She had thought he called her today to flaunt his success, to gloat over her supposed regret. She had come only to show him that she was fine, that she had no regrets. Never, not for 1 second, did she expect this. "You're so stunned you can't speak, huh?" Benjamin said with a smug smile, completely misinterpreting her silence. Isabella's breath shook, but her voice came out sharp, slicing through the air. "Benjamin, you're insane." Her volume rose for the first time that evening, drawing stares from nearby tables. Benjamin's face darkened immediately. "I am married," she continued, her voice trembling with rage, but steady in conviction. "I am pregnant. I have a husband who loves me. I have a stable, happy family. And you have a fiancé, a life you've already chosen. And now you come here, asking me to leave all of that? To be with you? To erase 10 years like nothing happened." Her voice shook slightly, but her eyes never wavered. "Is it that I can't accept your success? Or is it that you simply can't stand seeing me happy without you?" Benjamin's confidence finally cracked under the weight of her words. His hands balled into fists, his expression contorting with discomfort. "Isabella, you've held this grudge for 10 years just because I didn't take you back to our hometown," he argued.
Fine.
"I admit it was my fault. I'll make it up to you. I'll move back. I'll settle my work. I'll live near your parents, if that's what you want." He softened his tone, thinking he was being generous. "I know it's hard for you to decide now. I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. You can give me your answer before then." Isabella shook her head gently, her expression calm but resolute. "You don't need to wait that long," she said. "I can give you my answer right now." Benjamin stared at Isabella in shock, his voice trembling as he asked, "You've already made up your mind?" "There's nothing left to consider, Benjamin," Isabella replied, her tone steady and calm. "I have my own life now. What we had ended a long time ago. The moment we were reborn, we chose different paths. You don't need to sacrifice your career or ambitions for me. Don't want or need that. His expression hardened. You'd better think carefully before you speak, Isabella. I won't make this offer again. If that's all you came to say today, Isabella said as she stood up, then there's no need to waste any more of our time. Goodbye, Benjamin. Goodbye forever. Panic flashed across Benjamin's eyes as he reached out and grabbed her arm. His eyes were desperate now, the calm superiority replaced by something raw. I've come this far, how can you still not be satisfied? He asked, his voice rising. You really think that after 10 years apart, everything can just be dismissed? That one word from you can end everything between us. Isabella pulled her arm free. Her face was cold, detached. What makes you think that's possible? Then what do you want me to do? Benjamin's voice cracked as he nearly shouted. Get on my knees? Beg? Admit that I still love you. She gazed at him, her voice soft yet sharper than any blade. Benjamin, everything you've said today has completely shattered the image I once had of you. His tone shifted again, desperate now. Think of these 10 years like a bad dream. Let's start over. I only left back then because I was angry, not because I stopped loving you. A bitter laugh escaped Isabella's lips. No, Benjamin. You simply followed the path you always wanted. And now that you realize it wasn't as fulfilling as you imagined, you want to turn back and pretend none of it happened. His face grew tense. Why would I regret anything? Look at my success. Look at everything I've achieved. Emma would be overjoyed to have my child. Isabella remained calm. Your success means nothing to me. From the moment you chose to follow Emma to another city, we ceased to be anything to each other. Benjamin clenched his fists, his voice shaking. You just can't accept that I left you. No, Benjamin, she replied firmly. I've already accepted it long ago. You left. And so did I in my own way. You're just too proud to admit you still love me. You married Christopher because you settled, because I wasn't there, he insisted, growing angrier. Isabella's eyes turned cold, her voice steady. Back then, when you chose Emma so quickly and decisively, I was devastated. I couldn't understand how you didn't hesitate, not even for a second. I felt like a complete fool. She locked eyes with him. But something inside me broke that day, Benjamin. And after that, I stopped feeling anything for you. If you hadn't shown up again, I might have completely forgotten you by now. Benjamin stood frozen, unable to process her words. That's my truth, she said softly, but with finality. Don't appear in my life again, Benjamin. I've found happiness, peace, and a future full of hope. I won't let you disrupt it. She tore herself from his grip and walked away, never once looking back. Isabella truly believed that was the end. But fate wasn't finished yet. Only half a month later, she received an unexpected message from him. Isabella, I'm back. And this time, I won't leave again. She stared at the message in disbelief. Her chest tightened. She tried to convince herself it was just a hallucination. Can we meet? Without replying, she turned off her phone and tried to brush it off as a bad dream. But as she left work that evening, Benjamin was standing outside her office, holding a massive bouquet of flowers. Since her pregnancy, Christopher had gently encouraged her to take maternity leave and rest at home, but Isabella insisted on continuing work. She feared falling into boredom, or worse, prenatal depression. Work kept her balanced. Isabella, Benjamin called softly as he approached her. She stopped and looked at him with pure disgust. Was I not clear enough last time? You said you couldn't come back to me just because I asked once, Benjamin said quickly. Well, I've settled everything back in the city. I've come here permanently now. I promise I won't leave again. You really think that's what tore us apart? She asked bitterly. You believe that our relationship collapsed simply because I wanted to come home and you wanted to stay in the city? If we truly loved each other, would we have grown so far apart? The truth is, Benjamin, we both made choices. We both gave up on each other. I never gave up on you, Benjamin interrupted, his voice agitated. I loved you. I was afraid you wouldn't come with me, so I lied about returning. But I was only scared of losing you. Isabella's voice was steady. And after we were reborn, you didn't hesitate to follow Emma to another city without a second thought about me. Benjamin fell silent, pained. I thought you loved me enough to wait for me. I never imagined you'd actually move on and marry another man. She stared into his reddened eyes, filled with regret and desperation. If you were afraid of losing me, you should have cherished me back then. Benjamin's voice trembled. You only settled for Christopher because I wasn't around. You still love me deep down. That's why you're so cold now, because you're fighting your true feelings. Isabella shook her head gently. Benjamin, you mistake my indifference for struggle. But the truth is, I don't feel anything for you anymore. You lost me a long time ago. Tears welled up in Benjamin's eyes. He had never expected that one day Isabella would face him with such complete detachment, not anger, not bitterness, but simple, quiet indifference. In our past life, I followed you. I trusted you when you promised we would return home. And you broke that promise, she said softly. I never resented your ambition or your success. But you should have never lied to me. Benjamin tried desperately to justify himself. I was scared. I loved you so much I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. But after we were reborn, you didn't hesitate. You followed Emma, without even thinking about what it meant for us. He choked back his emotions. I thought you loved me enough to wait. I never thought you'd truly be with someone else. Then why did I break up with you so long ago, Benjamin? Isabella whispered. You couldn't accept that truth, that's why you came back for me. Benjamin looked at me with deep emotion and said, Isabella the first never truly loved Emma. It was just a passing infatuation. The person I've loved all along has always been you, but his confession only filled me with disgust. You say you didn't love Emma, and yet you wasted 10 years of her life. You claim to love me, but demand that I surrender to you. Now that things are no longer within your control, you start to panic and regret, don't you? Find your behavior despicable. Benjamin, I'm sorry, he stammered. Suddenly, he seemed lost, unable to defend himself. I'm sorry, Isabella, please forgive me this time. I promise I will never disappoint you again. As he spoke, Benjamin pulled a ring from his pocket. It was the very same ring he once dreamed of giving me. Isabella, do you remember this ring? Back in our previous life, when we got married, we couldn't afford it, but I promised you that one day I would buy it. I returned this time to reconcile, and I bought this ring especially for you. Do you know why Emma was so hostile toward you at the reunion? Because she knew I was coming back for you. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. So that was your plan. You came to reconcile, but instead of showing sincerity, your method was to belittle me and force me to beg for your forgiveness. I said nothing more, only glancing at the ring. I remember that even after you became wealthy in our past life, you still never gave me this ring. You were too busy back then. It's not because of busyness, but because you only realize the value of something after losing it. Benjamin admitted, even if that's my fault, even if everything is my mistake, Isabella, give me one more chance. Marry me. We'll start over this time. I'll give you everything you want. As he spoke, Benjamin knelt before me in front of my office building, proposing in our past life. I must have loved him too deeply. That's why he's so confident, believing that if I came back we could pretend as if nothing had ever happened. But I shook my head coldly. There's no chance. Benjamin, you say you gave up your career in the big city for me, but that was your choice, not mine. We broke up, and as I've told you countless times, our separation wasn't because of geography, it was your actions again. And again, that froze my heart. I can change. No, you won't change. Everything you do carries an ulterior motive. I chose not to be compassionate anymore. You knew how much I once loved you. That's why you manipulated that love shamelessly. Even if I found out in the end, you believed I would still forgive you. You didn't buy this ring because I wanted it, but because you thought you could use it to trap me again, because now you finally realize I no longer care about you. The reason you chose to stay isn't because of me, it's because your parents are aging, your mother has fallen ill, they need you here, and Emma isn't willing to stay with you anymore. So you thought of me. I spoke these words calmly, even smiling, because I truly no longer felt anything, even knowing that Benjamin's reasons Where pure I didn't feel the slightest emotion at that moment. I saw Christopher approaching from a distance, quietly standing beside me. I knew he had been waiting for me, like always respecting my decisions, offering a kind of trust and love that Benjamin could never give me. Love, can we go now? Christopher whispered, gently wrapping his arms around me. I nodded, not even giving Benjamin a final glance. We turned and walked away. Benjamin shouted behind us, I stayed for you, Isabella, not for Emma or my parents. I paused and answered without turning back. Even if none of those reasons existed, I would still never choose you again. Benjamin, when love is gone, it's gone. I can't even recall the happy moments we once shared. The happiness I see now is thanks to Christopher. After that day, I never allowed Benjamin to appear in my life again. I blocked his number, ignored every call from any unknown number. I also chose to quit my job. Christopher had always been worried about me working while pregnant. He always said he could take care of me, and if I felt bored, I could always work at his company. I had once refused because I didn't want to rely too much on him, but now I understood deeply that we were a real family. A few months later, I gave birth to our daughter. 6 months after that, Christopher and I held a grand wedding, inviting many old classmates. Of course, Benjamin was not among them. When Christopher and I approached the classmates' table to toast, I overheard a few of them whispering, Benjamin hasn't returned to the city for over a year. I heard Emma left him to another classmate. Added, Benjamin's mother passed away a few days ago. Fortunately, he was home with her, otherwise he would have lived with that regret forever. I went to the funeral. Benjamin looked completely different from the energetic man at last year's reunion. He was lifeless. They said his mother's biggest regret before passing was not having met her grandchild. Could it be that Benjamin still hasn't gotten over Emma? No, whispered another classmate. Emma was willing to stay with him and even tried to reconcile, but Benjamin rejected her. Emma said Benjamin couldn't forget someone, though she didn't finish her sentence. Her eyes glanced at me. I pretended not to hear anything, simply sipping my wedding wine, greeting the guests. After the wedding, when Christopher and I returned home exhausted, I was so tired I barely wanted to move. As Christopher sorted through the wedding gifts, he suddenly called out, Isabella, there's a personal envelope for you, I said as he handed it to me. Seeing Benjamin's name on it surprised me. I hadn't seen him all day. I looked at Christopher. He smiled reassuringly. I didn't see it earlier either. I opened the envelope. Inside was a ring along with a letter and 8,888 yuan as a wedding gift. The letter read, when I left after we were reborn, it wasn't only out of spite. I once thought that without you I could still find happiness with someone else, that I could live well for the first few years. I enjoyed an unprecedented freedom. No one forced me to eat breakfast. No one scolded me for coming home drunk after business dinners. No one nagged me to return home every day. But one day I started to miss you. I missed your cooking. I missed how you would always wait for me in the living room no matter how late I came home. I missed the way you held me close. I missed you for so long, but you never came looking for me. I stubbornly believed that you should be the one to give in because your choice was wrong, until I couldn't bear it any longer. I desperately wanted to be with you. I even started calling Emma by your name sometimes. So I returned and attended the class reunion. When I saw you dressed so plainly, I naively thought I had one. You seemed so fragile, so vulnerable. I thought if I asked you to come back, you wouldn't refuse, but reality slapped me hard. There was no longer love in your eyes when you looked at me. I thought money could still control everything, but I never expected you had already married Christopher, and that you were pregnant. You lacked neither love nor stability. I panicked. I didn't know what to do to bring you back. I kept convincing myself that you were only with Christopher out of spite, that I was still the one you truly loved. You loved me so deeply in our past life. I couldn't believe you had stopped loving me so easily, so shamelessly. I came looking for you, thinking I still had a chance. I believed everything Christopher could give you, I could give as well, and because you loved me more, it would eventually move you. But now, when I reflect, I realize I was simply humiliating myself. What right did I have to believe that after abandoning you, you would still be waiting for me? Truly, I was selfish and despicable. Even now, I want to tell you that giving up my life in the big city wasn't really for my parents, but for you. Though I am grateful I got to spend my mother's final days by her side, but none of this matters anymore now. All I feel is deep sorrow, Isabella. My heart aches unbearably. I went to the hospital the day you gave birth. I saw Christopher holding your child, his eyes full of joy as he embraced fatherhood for the first time. It reminded me of the child we never had in our past life. I was truly looking forward to becoming a father, but in this new life, that opportunity slipped away. I'm sorry, Isabella. I'm so sorry. I wish you eternal happiness. I stared at the letter, my emotions mixed. And heavy perhaps Benjamin's feelings now were like mine long ago when I watched him walk away, without hesitation. Even though I had always told myself to respect his choice in the quiet of the night, I had still cried silently. I had suffered deeply, but now everything was behind me. I didn't know how long it would take Benjamin to heal, but honestly, it no longer mattered. I gently folded the letter and dropped it into the trash bin, not noticing the faint words written on the back of the envelope. Isabella the First will be waiting outside your bridal chamber tonight. Waiting for you. Christopher noticed my action and smiled gently beside me. Love, he whispered softly, the night is still young, and time is too precious to waste. We turned off the lights. The long night stretched ahead of us, no longer lonely, no longer haunted. Only peace remained in the quiet darkness as we embraced our new life fully and completely.